Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the My Life in Law broadcast and editorial review, broadcasting from the beautiful San Francisco Mountains here in Missouri, which make up the heart of the Ozarks. The My Life in Law broadcast and editorial review is an educational service brought to you for the public's interest, and I'm your host and narrator, David Meese. It is our goal here at the My Life in Law broadcast and editorial review to bring you, the listener, vital information on law, science, politics, health, religion, history, news, economics, and current events with a no-spin factual approach. So stay tuned for tonight's broadcast on What is Money? A word of caution and notice to the My Life in Law broadcast and editorial review listeners. Any statements or discussions made by this host are in no way to be construed as legal advice and are merely my thoughts and opinions I formed over the 30-plus years of study, observation, and using American jurisprudence, and over 30-plus years of scriptural study with the last 20 years of living and practicing what some may call the Mosaic Law. It is the nature of law to be both impartial and yet specific to each individual. And as life is with any individual, it is to each at his own risk and to each at his own peril. Money, money, money. Everything's about money. We live, we eat, we breathe money. Got to make some money to pay the bills. Got to make some money to increase our status. Today's modern man has made everything about money, pretty much. But does he know what money is? Has anybody taken the time to, in the modern day, to study what money is supposed to be? And we're not ignorant on the situation because our Saxon laws, common law, Mosaic law, has instructed us on what money is. All the way back 3,300 years ago, Moses gave us a definition for what money was and is supposed to be. Leviticus 19:36 says a just balance, just weight, a just ephah, and a just hin shall ye have. Deuteronomy 25:15. But ye shall have a perfect and just weight, a perfect and just measure shall ye have, that thy days be lengthened in the land which Yahuwah has given thee. So we see that there's a penalty for not having a just weight and measure. Proverbs says, a false balance is an abomination unto Yahuwah. A just weight is his delight. So we can see that it's a big deal, and it's a commandment, and it has a penalty. So it's a law. So the question is, what is a just weight and what is a just measure? Now, we have that today in our law. We have weights and balances in most every statute, set of statutes on a state. You will have your weights and balances statutes. The Constitution has it, but going back, we see that it has to be just. So if I had some rope, let's say that I sold 10 feet of rope that I have made for a pound of corn, and you bring up a pound of corn and I get my scales out, and I start weighing your corn, what if I took my finger and I put it on my side of the scale? Made your corn just a little bit lighter. That would be unjust. That's stealing is what it is. And that's what it means. So when we use dollar bills or coins today, it has the same effect. It's a scale. It's a balance. So the question is our money, or so-called money, it's really, we'll see here in a little bit, it's really not money. And I would note the Messianic and the Jewish community like to point out to the Christians that certain things like swine aren't food. They're not on the food list, so they're not food. I would point out that fiat's not money. So let's not be hypocritical about it. So let's go back and see what we've done as a country. The founding fathers, back in the Constitutional Convention in 1787, followed that scriptural principle of law, when they put in the Constitution, Article 1, Section 10, these 17 words: no state shall make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debts. So let's go visit a little story here about what the government did in 1933 that introduced fiat into the system, and compare it to a just weight and measure. Now, I will say this before I read HCR 192. I will say years later they repealed this and broke it into dozens of little statutes and ordinances in the code. So you can't read it as plain as HCR 192 states it, because it's pretty plain on its face. Now, this is a result you had in the Depression. In the 20s, we're coming out of the Depression in 1933, and this is the New Deal. This is the New Deal. And just like Israel walked down and said, hey, we have upset our Elohim, our God, and he won't feed or clothe us or feed us, we did the same thing. Walked down and said, give us, we'll trade you all of our land, cattle, and labor for Fed notes. When Israel said we'll do the same for food down in Egypt, we did the same thing for a central bank, basically. So House Joint Resolution 192 was implemented on June 5th, 1933, 4:40 p.m. under the 73rd Congress. And it states, I'll sum it up for you before we read it. This is the end. Payment of debt is now against congressional and public policy, and henceforth every obligation shall be discharged. Okay, now you're starting to talk what the Patriots all get into the discharge thing, the UCC code. And it's unjust, it's wrong, it's not of Yah, it's not godly, it's not scriptural. And as a result of HCR 192, and from that day forward, June 5th, 1933, no one in this nation has been able to lawfully pay a debt or lawfully own anything. The only thing one can do is tender in a transfer of debt, which the debt being perpetual, just is forever, perpetual. It lasts. You're just trading from one hand to the other. This debt never goes away. My teacher likened it to if I loaned you 100 honey jars for your honey, and you had to pay me back 101, but there's a law that says I'm the only one that can make the honey jars, well, then you can never pay it back, and that's exactly what you have here. This is never going to get paid back. It doomed the United States, and we see that now. It's very plain. They've kept it at bay, the truth of it at bay for a long time, but some of us have been waiting for this thing to happen for several decades now. So the suspension of the gold standard and the prohibition against paying debt removed the substance from our common law to operate on, and created a void as far as the law is concerned. The substance was replaced with a public national credit system where debt is legal tender, what you call money. So when you have a Fed note in your hand, it says note, I owe you $1. I would point out also at this point that in Matthew 5, I believe it's verse 26, the Messiah says no one's leaving this planet until we pay every penny that we owe. You can go read that for yourself. I don't think that he wasted any words on that. A lot of misconception about what his teachings were. They like to mix it with other men, other people, but the Messiah taught that no one's leaving this place without paying every penny. Now, 192 states that no one can demand any certain form of currency that they want to receive if it is dollar for dollar. If you receive modern money, a Modern Money Mechanics article, any kind of newsletter where it explains money, you'll discover that all the currency is credit. The Federal Reserve calls it monetized debt. You know, they implemented this thing the day after President Roosevelt signed the resolution. The Treasury offered the public new government securities, minus the traditional payments in gold clause. If you read a court case called Downs versus Bidwell at 182 U.S. 244, you'll see how this works. It says 2 national governments exist, one to be maintained under the Constitution with all of its restrictions, and the other to be maintained by Congress outside and independent of that instrument. So you see, when you're messing with commerce and Federal Reserve notes, fiat of any kind, their system, you're not in the Constitution. You have no rights. They might act like there's this right or that right and give some people a win here or there. Because, well, first off, the courts have no obligation to educate a man on law. You're supposed to learn the law yourself. Scripture teaches that. You're supposed to be diligently seeking all of this out. And if you're not, yeah, I'd get on it if you're worried about those things. And to those that aren't, this can educate you too, if you know how this stuff works. So they plainly know that there's 2 governments. Now, everybody stepped out of the Constitution and stepped into this fiat system. And all that the government's doing is exercising their right to do business. You know, you or I could do the same thing. We could offer Social Security, a Social Security type plan. We could offer something as our own fiat. I'm trying to remember. There was a company when I was growing up that kind of done that. You would have certificates, and some of these grocery stores used to collect stamps. And you get so many stamps, you could order a thing out of a catalog, and that's the same principle. So the government's only exercising its right and trying to survive. Once they created this entity known as the government, and they started making their own laws, well, it was fighting for its life. So they have to protect themselves too. So just like any other business, and all these guys who complain about, oh, they tricked me into this contract and that contract, but they still want to use the benefits. And if we read, I'm kind of getting off a little bit of topic here, but I would like people to actually understand, well, how to put this all together. If we go up to a case, let me find it here. Here it is. Hale versus Hinkle at 201 U.S. 4347, 1905. We see the benefits of a person who stays out of the system, their system. It's all choice. No one's forcing anybody to do anything against their will or over their objection in this country. It just isn't happening. And if you think it is, it's because you don't understand law. And it's your job. And God tells you it's your job to do this, to be diligent, study to show thyself approved. And if you don't, it's your own fault. That's the way it is. It's sad. And Yah says, my people are destroyed for their lack of knowledge. But he also says, Revelations 18:4, come out of her, my people, so you don't have to participate in the plagues that's coming because of all this violations of breaking his law. So anyway, we see here what the Supreme Court has to say about an individual's right to do business without government intrusion. Let's hear this. There is a clear distinction in this particular case between an individual and a corporation, and that the latter has no right to refuse to submit its books and papers for an examination at the suit of the state. The individual may stand upon his constitutional right as a citizen, and let me point out, and this is not a part of the case, but you don't have to be a citizen of the U.S. to claim constitutional rights. is human rights, and it's the same thing. Anyway, the individual may stand upon his constitutional rights as a citizen. He is entitled to carry on his private business in his own way. His power to contract is unlimited. He owes no such duty to the state, since he receives nothing therefrom. See, he is not taking any benefits beyond the protection of his life and his property. His rights are such as existed by law of the land, long exceeding the organization of the state, and can only be taken away from him by due process of law and in accordance with the Constitution. Among his rights are the refusal to incriminate himself and the immunities of himself and his property from arrest or seizure except under the warrant of law. He owes nothing to the public so long as he does not trespass upon their rights. Upon the other hand, the corporation is a creature of the state. It is presumed to be incorporated for the benefits of the public. It receives certain special privileges and franchises and holds them subject to the laws of the state and to the limitations of its charter. Its powers are unlimited by law. It can make no contract not authorized by its charter. Its rights to act as a corporation are only preserved to it as long as it obeys the laws of its charter. That's Hale versus Hinkle. Now, I would point out, I have notes here, that when you have a social security number, driver's license, marriage license, you're using Fed notes, commercial paper of any kind, that's loans, whatever you're using, clad coin, you are the corporation that has no rights. You're a creature of the state and not acting as an individual. Even if you have none of those contracts, those covenants with the state, if you're playing with their money, with their legal tender, it's not money we see. You can't just tell them what to do with they have the right to use that fiat themselves if they want to break Yah's law. And the government, you'll see the government's never really breaking the Torah. They only make you offers to break the Torah. It is they offer you the opportunity to break the Torah. All these licenses, you'll find that all the licenses are permission to break the law of Yahuwah. Real estate brokers, the scripture says you shall not sell the land forever, but right there on every contract a real estate broker is broking, it says forever. The same with the driver's license. The driver's license is prima facie evidence that you're a subject of the state, you're a citizen of the state, and that you're in commerce, that you're on their little waterways, and it's all admiralty law. Sure, all of the patriots, they gripe about the fringe flags and the capital all caps names, and that is nothing. They just don't understand it. Fringe flags belong in the courtroom most of the time. A judge wears 3 hats. He has his admiralty hat, his equity hat, and his common law hat. And you have to be responsible enough and have the knowledge enough to tell him which hat he needs to have on. Or else he's going to assume, and that's fine. Law assumes a lot until you assert otherwise, and that's just the way it works. But most of the things that a judge is seeing in his court are stuff like marriage license and divorces and Social Security cases, people making claims, insurance, just all of this stuff. Now, even though they've codified it and put it in statute, things like murder and stealing and things like that, that's common law. That's a common law hat. That's why those laws are still there. Now, as I said, they've codified them. They have their own penalties for them. And so on and so forth. But the individual, that's the law that he is responsible for. It's the common law. Don't steal. Don't be stealing people's things, moving property lines, or assaulting other people. And stealing is a big, broad paintbrush. Big, you take big strokes with that. So the white collar guy, he just steals from you a different way. Well, the same as the government. They like to steal from you with a bunch of unjust taxes. But if you're in their system, You have to question yourself: is it unjust? You're not you have the First Amendment. You could get out of that system. Then if they try to do it, first you insert your rights, and then you show them why they can't do it. And this is a big statement, and I do not have my notes here that are where I can grab them and explain it properly. But no property or labor of a person has ever been taxed in the United States. What they're doing is taxing the fiat. You use their fiat, you want to pay them to use it. That's how it is. Now, there are sales tax and things like that. You don't have to buy from them. You can go make your own. People all mad because they try to regulate guns and they regulate this and they regulate that. And it's all built under their system. They can. And that's what we just read there. The other case where there's two national governments that exist. You see that they have the right. They have the right to regulate anything that their system's making, and you have the right to go make your own. Go grow your own food. Make your own clothes. No one is stopping us from doing that. We can have a system, too, amongst individuals. That's called private business. And it's different than public business. It's not public business. And they regulate public business. So I've been trying to look for that. I already read that case, though. Two national governments. Here it is. Down versus Bidwell. That's right. Let's read that again real quick. It's real short. 182 U.S. 244. Two national governments exist, one to be maintained under the Constitution. Now that's the individual, the private business guy, with all of its restrictions, and those restrictions are against government regulations. The other government on these two national governments to be maintained by Congress outside and independent of that instrument being the Constitution, outside of the Constitution. They explain it to you plain and simple, and it's proper. It's completely proper. They have the right to do business. And if you want to do business with criminals, that's your right. Of course it is. I suggest, and I chose not to. I'm not going to do business with criminals and people that break Torah. I have a different way of going about it. Anyway, let's get back on track here. So to recap, in 1933, President Roosevelt took our gold away. And in 1964, Johnson took the silver in an attempt to do what they're doing to you today with the FedNow currency and the new electronic system, and that is to wrangle everybody in under the control of the government that's using that system. Now, the Supreme Court ruled that it was unconstitutional to take the gold and silver away, so it was replaced. So we have gold and silver that we can use, and it's legal money, and it's a just weight and measure as far as Scripture is concerned. And to recap, these two presidents gave you unjust weights and measures. They gave you fiat currency, Federal Reserve notes in place of gold-backed Treasury notes. And they gave you clad coin in place of silver. What this done was implement the first, second, and fifth planks to the Communist Manifesto. As a result, in the following 70 years or so, the United States has went from the number one lender in the world to the number one debtor in the world. We owe more debt than any other country in the whole face of the planet. So it makes you wonder who was the better at monetary policy. Was it Moses and the founding fathers that were sticking to the Scripture? Or was it Roosevelt and Lyndon Baines Johnson who brought us the fiat system and really brought down the United States as a people? One of the big problems is that you hear from people that are in positions to teach are affirming, hey, all this is okay. You have your teachers that teach you the system and trust government and just give your life to it with unfailing and unblinking eyes and total trust. And the preachers, the Christian preachers out there are backing this all up. It's okay. This is all okay. But in Isaiah 58, verse 1 and 2, I get a different message. And it says, "Cry aloud, spare not, lift up thy voice like a trumpet, and show my people their transgressions, and the house of Jacob their sins." Now, when is it the last time that you heard a preacher telling you that fiat and insurance, limited liability, credit, money printed on the labor of the unborn, which is stealing? How many times have you heard that from the pulpit, that that's wrong, that's a sin? I don't think they're doing it. And until these guys get on the ball and start doing their job, more people's just going to be crushed under the "my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge" verses. So let's take a look at inflation, for example. Does Scripture have anything to say about inflation? What causes inflation? Have we always had inflation? Does the Scripture say or teach us anything about inflation? Is there anything that we can do about inflation? Is there any time in the U.S. history that we didn't have inflation? And the answer to that question is absolutely yes. From 1787 to 1933, there was absolutely no inflation in the economy of the United States of America. There were periods of small inflation that went back down where they were supposed to be, caused by the Civil War, World War I, or things like that. But in the big picture, inflation didn't exist. But in 1913, for some reason, we decided we needed a central bank. Now, if you want to go read books like Creature of Jekyll Island and things like that, you can figure that out. But short story is, in 20 years, the United States had bankrupted itself. And as said before, that's when Roosevelt put us on a fiat system, a split system, fiat backed by some silver coin, until that was also removed by Johnson and replaced with clad coin. Now, if you study today, the base metals on the clad coin are worth more than the coin. It's kind of a crazy way of thinking. I have no clue of how they think that works. So they are looking for cheaper and cheaper ways to make your money worth less and less, so it don't cost as much to mint it. And I think they found the ultimate. Well, we'll just go with the Fed now, the electronics, and get rid of all the money. And I thought that was kind of counterproductive. A country would want their money to become worth more, not less. But that's just what they're bringing us. Or, well, I can't include myself in that. I don't deal with fake money. Now, as far as inflation goes, I could go on and on about statistics and this and that and the other about how it works, but I was always taught to keep it simple, stupid, the KISS method. So, in general, what inflation is interest on the Federal Reserve notes, on the fiat. So we have usury on the money that we use, and that's what inflation is. That's all it is. So you have an economy based on borrowing more. You have to keep borrowing and borrowing and borrowing for the economy to work. And thus, you have $37 trillion deficit today. And the inflation worldwide, not just the U.S., but all these countries, the governments are lying about. They're stealing your hard-earned money. Their politics, ticks parasite. And it's eating away your sustenance. You will have absolutely nothing left. And that's the plan. That's always been the plan. So let's take a look at what Scripture says about inflation and how that's supposed to work. Don't hear any preachers out there crying aloud, trying to tell people about this problem. So I figured, I guess I should do it, being no one else is. So we have two verses that deal with this, unjust weights and measures. And the first one you'll find in Leviticus 19, 35 and 36. Ye shall do no unjustness in judgment, in metyard, in weight, or in measure. Just balances, just weights, and a just ephon, and a just hin shall ye have. I am Yahuwah your Elohah, which brought you out of the land of Egypt. There's a second statute here in Deuteronomy 25, verses 13 through 16. And it basically says the same thing. Thou shalt not have in thy bag diverse weights, a great and a small. Thou shalt not have in thy house diverse measures, a great and a small. But thou shalt have a perfect and just weight. A perfect and just measure shalt thou have, that the days may be lengthened in the land which the Lord thy God, Yahuwah, gives thee. For all that do such things, and all that do unrighteously, are an abomination unto Yahuwah your Elohim. Elohah. So it seems pretty plain that one can't participate in unjust weights and measures, which fiat is, and be in compliance with these statutes. And the creator of the universe says it's an abomination to him. And that's not good. Abominations are not good at all. No positive in that. And to sum that all up, your government, which is really truly the voters, whoever's voting and whoever has their name in the pile of the voters registration, these people are printing on paper $100 bill. They cost them about a nickel to print, and then they're going out and they're buying $100 worth of goods and services with that, and that's not a just weight and measure. So if you was wondering and just couldn't figure out what's so unjust about it, that's the start right there. It costs 3 cents or a nickel, something like that, for the paper to print $100 on, and they'll print 20 or 5 on the same piece of paper. See, if you want to trade paper as a just weight and measure, then take the numbers off of it and trade it for weight. That's how you trade hard commodity. You're going to trade it for its value, not for what you print on it because you say so, which is what fiat is. So be it. Now, inflation is good. I'm not denying that. It's wonderful for business. It's very, very profitable for some. Those being corporate America and the political establishment. And that's why we have so much inflation. So it's good for your political process. It just makes it hum. It makes corporate America hum. The banks. But see, the problem is it violates the laws of Yahuwah, of the laws of God. So all of these notes in fiat and mortgages and insurance and credit cards and the Fed notes, the stock market, 401ks, IRAs, retirement plans, like we said, that's all great for the political process, but it violates the Torah. It violates the laws of God. And it doesn't work. And there's penalties for doing it. And there's penalties for those who do it. These are unjust weights and balances. And some preacher somewhere ought to stand up and cry aloud and tell you. Instead, we have a bunch of college-educated financial people out there teaching us the way. Now, this is called the M3 for all the educated people out there that are into finances, and they took those charts away so you couldn't see them. If you go to some place like Kitco, it's been a long time since I messed with anything like that. I think it's there was one called the Magambo report or something like that, and they tell you about the inflation. And these are the things, if everybody knew about it, I don't know. Most people wouldn't care. I guess most people wouldn't care. That's what we've had so far, is a nation of people who just don't care. They take the easy way, or what they perceive to be the easy way. But you see, it breaks the laws of Yahuwah. And not only does it break, the penalties of it are inflation. When you use unjust weights and measures, that's the cause of inflation. Unjust weights and measures. So this is one of the things that you get out of breaking the Mosaic law on this just weights and measures statute, is inflation. Not to mention all the interest you pay on mortgages and stuff. And that's another statute. You're not supposed to do usury either. But here's the kicker. The fiat is 100% based in usury. That's what inflation is. So we have two things that happen there that violate Yahuwah's laws, statutes, and judgments when we are dealing with fiat currencies or electronic funds. It's all the same thing. Now, if you're an economist type, again, you can get that M3 report. All you got to do is look for it, and it will show you how much fiat's being printed currently. You have to take in consideration all the past also. And in short, what it's going to do is probably within 11 to 13 months, after each printing, it's going to increase the price of the products that you buy. So if you're not increasing your wages, then you're going to be falling behind. And that's exactly what we're seeing. I think it's forecasted that within the next 6 months, there's going to be 20 million residential homes foreclosed on. You're watching the crushing of America. And it's due to unjust weights and measures, for one. Another is breaking the Sabbath and the Sabbath laws, the land Sabbath. You'll be removed from the land. We're in national captivity now. We've watched other countries go into it, South Africa, Australia, and places like that, the Saxon countries. And we're going into national captivity too. We're there. Now, not everybody has to go. These Israel countries, these Saxon countries, used to have a God that would tell you, they would listen to, how to live, how to do it. And the unjust weights and measures are the reason that you have the inflation and the crushed economy, and that you're living like you are going into national captivity. We have gold and silver available to do all of our business with, and we have every day, all of our lives. For those who are listening, most of us anyway, there's no sense in going down with the ship. If you want to practice just weights and measures, all you got to do is practice hard money, real commodities. You know, it's not just gold and silver, seeds, hay, oil, honey, things that grow. Make, raise, and grow, buy, sell, and trade. And the buy, sell, and trade, only a man without a social security number can profit from buy, sell, and trade. So as we hear in Revelations, in the end days, you won't be able to buy, sell, or trade in the public, is my theory, without the mark of the beast, which I think will be, well, I think it already is, a social security number. It'll be used to get you into the electronic bank system eventually. And I think that that's happening faster and faster as we go. But for those who want out and who want to answer the call of Revelation 18:4, come out of her, my people, I would do that if I was you. I would come out of her and out of the system, get rid of all these covenants with the foreign and alien gods, that'd be governments. Our governments, all the Saxon countries, allow it. They have no problem with it. That's what the First Amendment is. It's just that men are too lazy to use it. So anyway, for those who wanted to know about money and what money is and what money is not, and why they're in inflation and being crushed right now, I thought I would share that with you. Cry aloud. So that'll be my theme for today. I'm going to cut her down to a minimum. I think I got about 40 minutes here. I appreciate you listening, and hopefully I'll be able to get another broadcast out soon. Thank you. May Yahuwah bless those who follow his ways, have mercy on those who should, and you have a nice day.